Jesus didn't multiply 5 loaves and 2 fish just to feed a hungry crowd. He was revealing something far greater, something most people completely missed. In one of the most famous miracles in the Bible, the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus Christ takes a small offering of 5 loaves and 2 fish and turns it into a feast for thousands. At first glance, it looks like a simple act of compassion, feeding the hungry in a remote place. But this miracle, recorded in all 4 Gospels, carries a much deeper meaning. It wasn't just about bread. It wasn't just about hunger. It was a sign, a message about who Jesus truly is and what he came to offer the world. In this story, we'll uncover the hidden meaning behind the miracle, why Jesus chose this moment, what he was teaching his disciples, and how this event points to something far greater than physical provision. Because sometimes the miracle isn't just what you see, it's what it reveals. Part 1, the hungry crowd. The day had been long, and the crowd kept growing. Thousands of people had followed Jesus Christ into a remote place, far from cities, far from markets, drawn by his words, his presence, and the hope of something more. They came with questions, with pain, with curiosity. Some came seeking healing. Others came just to see the man everyone was talking about. And Jesus welcomed them all. He taught them, healed the sick, and spoke of the kingdom of God in a way they had never heard before. But as the sun began to set, reality set in. The people were hungry, and there was no food, no nearby villages, no place to buy bread. Just thousands of men, women, and children in the middle of nowhere. The disciples grew concerned. This wasn't just a small problem, it was impossible. Feeding a crowd this size would require enormous resources. So they came to Jesus with a practical solution. Send the people away so they can find food. But Jesus responded with something unexpected, something that didn't make sense. You give them something to eat. In that moment, the problem shifted. It was no longer about the crowd, it was about faith. The disciples looked around and saw lack. Not enough money, not enough food, not enough resources. But Jesus saw something else entirely. This wasn't just a crisis, it was the setup for a miracle. Part 2, the small offering. The disciples searched the crowd, hoping to find something, anything that could help. But what could possibly feed thousands in such a desolate place? Then, almost unexpectedly, a small detail emerged. Among the crowd was a boy. In his hands, he carried a simple meal, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. It wasn't much. In fact, it was barely enough for one person, let alone thousands. When the food was brought to Jesus Christ, the disciples couldn't help but question it. What is this among so many? It was a fair question. The gap between what they had and what they needed was overwhelming. Logic said it was useless. Reason said it wouldn't matter. But Jesus didn't reject the small offering. He didn't dismiss it because it was insignificant. Instead, he received it. In that moment, something profound was happening. The miracle wasn't starting with abundance, it was starting with surrender. A small gift placed in the hands of Jesus became the foundation for something extraordinary. This is the turning point of the story. Because the lesson was never about how much they had, it was about what they were willing to give. What seemed insignificant to the disciples was more than enough in the hands of Jesus. And the miracle was just beginning. Part 3, the miracle unfolds. The crowd sat down on the grass row by row, waiting, uncertain, curious, hungry. There was no sign of food, no visible solution, just a quiet anticipation hanging in the air. Then Jesus Christ took the 5 loaves and 2 fish into his hands. He looked up to heaven, gave thanks, and broke the bread. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just bread being broken, fish being divided. But then something extraordinary began to happen. As the disciples distributed the food, it did not run out. Piece after piece, portion after portion, it kept multiplying. What should have been gone in moments continued to flow. The more they gave, the more there was. The impossible was unfolding right before their eyes. The crowd ate, every man, every woman, every child, until they were completely satisfied. Not just a taste, not just a portion, but fullness. And when it was all over, something even more astonishing remained. 12 baskets full of leftovers. More than what they started with. This was no ordinary miracle. It wasn't just about feeding the hungry. It was a revelation, a glimpse into a power that defied human limits. A sign that in the hands of Jesus, scarcity becomes abundance, and the impossible becomes reality. The disciples had started the day seeing lack. Now they were holding baskets overflowing with more than enough. Part 4, the hidden meaning. At first glance, it seems simple. Hungry people were fed, a miracle was performed, and a crisis was solved. But what Jesus Christ did that day was far more than an act of compassion. It was a message, one that many in the crowd did not fully understand. The bread he multiplied was not just physical food. It was a sign pointing to something greater. Later, Jesus would declare, "I am the bread of life." In that moment, he revealed that just as physical bread satisfies hunger for a short time, he alone could satisfy the deeper hunger of the human soul, completely and eternally. The miracle also challenged the way people think about provision. The crowd saw a problem of scarcity, but Jesus revealed a truth of abundance. In God's hands, what seems insufficient becomes more than enough. And then there were the disciples. This miracle was as much for them as it was for the crowd. Jesus was teaching them to trust, not in what they could see, but in who he is. He was showing them that their limitations were not the end of the story. But many in the crowd missed the deeper meaning. They saw the miracle, but not the message. They ate the bread, but did not recognize the one who provided it. This moment was never just about feeding thousands. It was about revealing a truth that would echo far beyond that hillside. That the greatest hunger is not physical, and the greatest provision is not bread. Part 5, the reaction of the crowd. The miracle had left the crowd in awe. Thousands had eaten until they were full, witnessing something they could not explain. This was no ordinary teacher. This was power unlike anything they had ever seen. Whispers began to spread through the crowd. Surely this is the prophet, the one who is to come into the world. Excitement grew. Hope turned into expectation. But it wasn't the kind of understanding Jesus Christ came to reveal. The people began to think in earthly terms. If Jesus could provide food like this, then he could solve all their problems. He could lead them, protect them, even become their king. No more hunger, no more struggle. They wanted to take him by force and make him king. But Jesus saw their hearts. He understood that they were focused on the miracle, not the meaning. They desired the bread, but not the truth behind it. They were seeking provision, but not transformation. So instead of embracing their praise, Jesus withdrew. He stepped away from the crowd, refusing to be crowned by misunderstanding. The miracle had revealed who he was, but the crowd had only seen what they wanted. They followed him for what he could give, not for who he truly is. Part 6, the deeper lesson. The miracle of the 5 loaves and 2 fish was never just about food. It was about revealing a truth that goes far beyond physical hunger. Jesus Christ showed that day that he is more than a provider. He is the source, not just of bread, but of life itself. The crowd ate and were satisfied for a moment, but their deeper hunger remained. That is the lesson many missed. We often look to God for what he can give, solutions, blessings, provision. But this miracle invites us to look beyond the gift and see the giver. Because what we truly need is not temporary satisfaction, but lasting fulfillment. The small offering of 5 loaves and 2 fish teaches another powerful truth. What we place in God's hands, no matter how small, can become more than enough. And the 12 baskets left over, they remind us that God doesn't just meet needs, he exceeds them. His provision is abundant, overflowing, and beyond human understanding. In the end, this miracle asks a question that still echoes today. Are we following Jesus for what he can give, or for who he truly is? Because the greatest miracle was never the multiplication of bread. It was the revelation of the bread of life.